In this lesson, let's learn about what is Active Directory. As you may know, before Active Directory, workgroup model was very popular at workplace. Therefore, we will start this lesson by analyzing the problems with workgroup. Then we will see how Active Directory solves workgroup problems. After that, we will give the definition of what Windows Active Directory is, and finally, we will sum up the lesson with the keynotes. Let's start with this small workgroup. In this workgroup, we need to allow Mary to access PC1 and Peter to access PC2, and both Mary and Peter to access server 1 and server 2. To achieve the requirements for this workgroup, we need to create an account for Mary on PC1 for her to access PC1 and create an account for Peter on PC2 for him to access PC2. Then we need to create accounts for both Mary and Peter on server 1 for them to access resources on server 1. And finally, we need to create accounts for both Mary and Peter on server 2 for them to access resources on server 2. So after having the accounts, Mary can log on to PC1 with the accounts created in PC1, and Peter can log on to PC2 with the account created in PC2. For example, now they need to access the resources on server 1, so Peter have to use the account created in server 1 to access the resources on server 1, and Mary have to use the account created on server 1 to access the resources on server 1. Now we need to allow Mary and Peter to be able to access the application IT Life Skills A and IT Life Skills B. In order to do that in this workgroup environment, we need to create accounts for both Mary and Peter on the application IT Life Skills A and assign their roles for them to access and use the application. Similarly, we have to create account for both Mary and Peter on application IT Life Skills B and assign their roles for them to access and use the application. Next, we need to perform some settings on PC1, PC2, server 1, and server 2. To perform the settings on the devices in this workgroup environment, we need to log on to PC1 and set the settings, then log on to PC2 and set the settings, and log on to server 1 and set the settings. Finally, we need to log on to server 2 and set the settings. Now we all agree that workgroup model creates so many duplicate records for the same users, which make it very time consuming and easy to make mistakes when enabling users to access resources. The system is not scalable because it becomes very complicated when the system has more than 10 users, servers, and applications. There must be a centralized system to handle these requirements more effectively, and that is exactly the reason why Microsoft created Windows Active Directory to solve all of these problems. Let's talk about Windows Active Directory. Microsoft Windows Active Directory, or AD, is a central database that is used to store users, servers, computers, and GPOs as its objects. The AD database is stored on a Windows server, installed with Active Directory domain service, and then be promoted to be a domain controller, or DC. So how clients can join to Active Directory? Clients such as computers, servers, and printers can join to the Active Directory by providing their information along with the admin credentials. Joining to domain controllers created trust relationship between the clients and the domain controllers. So these clients' computers have already been created a trust relationship with the domain controller. How users' accounts are added to Active Directory database. User accounts can be added or updated to the Active Directory database by a user or a script with admin privilege. User accounts created in Active Directory also establish a trust relationship with domain controllers and the clients join to the Active Directory. How applications grant user access. Being integrated with Active Directory, applications are no longer need to create accounts for the users. To grant access, application can query user accounts stored in Active Directory and grant permissions. Let's see how Active Directory enable resource and application access. To do that, we will analyze how Mary accessed the file share on server 1 from PC 1. As you can see, Mary's account was created in the Active Directory database, and PC 1 and server 1 had already joined to the Active Directory domain, which means a trust relationship had been established on Mary's account, PC 1, server 1, and the domain controller, which allow Mary to log on to PC 1 by providing the correct credential, and the logon request is sent to the domain controller. The domain controller performs the authentication by verifying the credential in the request, and it finds Mary accounts and grant the access since the credential is correct. After being authenticated, Mary can request the access token to access the file share on server 1 based on the permission. Let's see how Active Directory can help with deploying the settings on the clients. In the Active Directory environment, admin users can create group policy objects or GPO in Active Directory database. The GPOs technically are the settings required by the business. These GPO objects then can securely be applied to user or clients in the entire system. So in this Active Directory environment, we can create the group policy for PC with the name PC settings that set the homepage, printers, and network drive, and we can assign the PC setting to all the clients in the system. Next, we can create a new group policy named server settings, which set the firewall, time server, and power management, and we can assign the server settings to all the member servers in the system. Now, when server 1 is connected to the Active Directory, and the Active Directory can send the server setting group policy to server 1. Similarly, when PC1 connected to the domain controller, it will get the PC setting, and PC2 will also get the PC setting when it connected to the Active Directory. And that is how Active Directory deploy the settings to the clients. Now we have the answer for the question, what is Active Directory? Active Directory is a central database that is used to store users, clients, and group policies as its objects, which eliminates duplicate records created in clients. By establishing the trust relationship with its objects allows Active Directory to authenticate and authorize user and client accesses, streamline the settings of the clients via group policies. This is the end of this lesson. Please read the keynotes in the next slide.